Long before Jennifer Dulos disappeared, she wrote that she and one of her daughters slept better whenever Fotus was away. At the time, it read like one exhausted mother's observation. A small truth buried inside a story about children, interrupted sleep, and the relentless routine of raising a large family. After May 24th, 2019, it sounded different. But Jennifer Farber was more than the woman at the center of a missing person case. Before the police searches, court filings, and headlines, she was a writer, a playwright, a Brown University graduate and the daughter of Gloria Farber, part of a prominent New York family. Writing was not simply something Jennifer had studied. It was how she made sense of her life. She later earned a master's degree in writing from New York University's Tisch School of the Arts. She contributed online pieces to Patch and maintained a family blog where she wrote about motherhood with warmth, humor, and a willingness to admit when she was overwhelmed. That ability to put private feelings into words would eventually matter in a way she could not have anticipated. Her history with Fotus Dulos began at Brown University in the late 1980s. He graduated in 1989. Jennifer followed in 1990. Their lives then moved in separate directions, and nearly 17 years passed before a chance encounter brought them together again. The beginning sounded almost cinematic. That contrast is hard to impressive identity of his own. He was charismatic, intensely athletic, and fiercely competitive. He had earned an MBA in finance from Columbia Business School and competed at a high level in water skiing, a sport that remained central to his social world. Jennifer and Fotus married in the summer of 2004, only about a month after his divorce from his first wife. That same year, he founded 4 Group, a Connecticut real estate development company specializing in luxury homes. The business created the kind of visible success that photographs capture well: large properties, expensive travel, athletic pursuits, and a family life that appeared full. Then came the children, 5 of them, including 2 sets of twins, born into a household that demanded constant movement. Jennifer stayed home with them while continuing to write whenever she could. Her blog's title reduced the family arithmetic to 3 words: 5 makes 7. It was affectionate, hopeful, almost defiant. Lauren Almeida, a family friend and babysitter, saw the daily reality behind that title. Jennifer was attentive and warm with the children. She could be funny about the disorder surrounding her. But 5 young children meant school schedules, meals, appointments, laundry, bedtime, and the kind of fatigue that does not disappear after one good night's sleep. Jennifer did not pretend otherwise in her writing. In a 2012 entry, when her youngest child was still a baby, she described the strain of sleeplessness. She noted that she and one daughter rested better when Fotus traveled. She ended the anecdote by addressing her child and writing that she knew the difficult period would pass, but feared she might be in a body bag by then. It was dark humor from a tired mother. That is the context in which she wrote it. Treating it as a literal prediction would go beyond what the entry itself established. Still, years later, those words would be read beside statements Jennifer made under oath. And those statements were not jokes. The polished family image had begun to fracture. Fotus traveled frequently. During that period, he became involved with Michelle Troconis, a single mother who had been raised in Venezuela. Michelle had worked as a sports reporter, was connected to the equestrian world, and shared Fotus' interest in competitive water skiing. Jennifer discovered the affair through emails and receipts. According to accounts that later emerged, Fotus had not gone to great lengths to conceal the relationship. He reportedly proposed that Michelle and her daughter move into the family home. Think about what that meant. Jennifer was being asked to accept her husband's girlfriend and the girlfriend's child inside the house where she was raising 5 children of her own. She refused. Then she began preparing to leave. Jennifer did not announce those plans openly. With Lauren's help, she quietly organized what she and the children would need. She feared that filing for divorce while still living with Fotus could provoke him, so the departure had to happen first. On June 19, 2017, Fotus called 911. He said Jennifer had taken the children toward New York and that he could not reach them. His messages appeared to be going through, but no one was responding. From his description, his wife and children were missing. They were not. Jennifer had left intentionally. The next day, she sought emergency custody protections and filed for divorce. In her family court papers, Jennifer said she knew the filing would enrage Fotus. She wrote that he had an attitude that he must always win, whatever the cost. She believed he would retaliate and try to harm her in some way. Her words were direct. "I am afraid of my husband." She also said her fear had intensified after learning that Fotus had acquired a gun. Those were Jennifer's stated concerns in an active custody dispute. They were not, by themselves, proof of what would happen 2 years later, but they were contemporaneous warnings from a woman explaining to a court why she believed she and her children needed protection. The divorce became a war of attrition. Lawyers on both sides filed motion after motion. The custody battle stretched through 2017, then 2018, and into 2019. Money drained away. Fotus' business position deteriorated. His access to the children was repeatedly restricted, while Jennifer remained in New Canaan with all 5 of them, close to their school. By the spring of 2019, the Dulos family had not simply separated. Jennifer had escaped a home she considered unsafe. Fotus was losing control of the custody fight, his finances, and the family structure he wanted restored. Then came a Friday morning built around school drop-off, tea, and appointments. By lunchtime, 10 new rolls of paper towel were gone, and so was Jennifer. At 7:58 a.m. on May 24th, 2019, Jennifer drove away with her children. 7 minutes later, a camera recorded her returning home alone. That morning was supposed to follow a familiar rhythm. Jennifer would take the children to school, return to the New Canaan house, and then leave for several medical appointments in New York. Her 2017 Chevrolet Suburban appeared on a neighbor's surveillance camera as she headed toward the school, which was only a short distance away. At approximately 8:05, the same camera captured the Suburban traveling back toward her house, 7 minutes out, then home again. After that, there was a gap of more than 2 hours. At 10:25 a.m., the Suburban was recorded leaving the property for a second time. The footage established that the vehicle had moved. It did not provide a clear enough view to establish who was behind the wheel. That distinction matters. Jennifer was never conclusively seen driving away at 10:25. At approximately 11:30, family friend and babysitter Lauren Almeida arrived at the New Canaan house. She entered through the garage and noticed that one of Jennifer's vehicles was gone. At first, that made perfect sense. Jennifer was meant to be on her way to New York. Inside, though, the morning looked interrupted. Jennifer's handbag was on the floor. A mug used for tea remained on the counter. Nearby was a granola bar with only part of it eaten. None of those details proved that something violent had happened. People leave cups out. They put bags down. They abandon breakfast when they are running late. But taken together, the scene did not look like someone who had calmly gathered her things and left for a full day of appointments. Then Lauren opened the pantry. The previous evening, she had placed a new package of 12 rolls of paper towels inside. Now only 2 rolls remained. 10 rolls had disappeared overnight or during the morning. Think about how much that is. Not a few sheets pulled off to wipe a counter. Not one roll used during an ordinary cleanup. 10 complete rolls were gone, and Jennifer was not answering her phone. Lauren texted her around noon. No response. She tried again at approximately 1:00 p.m. Still nothing. As the afternoon passed, Lauren collected all 5 children. Jennifer did not appear to pick them up, and she did not contact anyone to explain a delay. Lauren's concern was no longer limited to a missed message. Jennifer had also failed to attend her scheduled appointments in New York. At around 4:00 p.m., Lauren called her cell phone. The call went directly to voicemail. By then, the children needed somewhere safe to go while the adults worked out what was happening. They were taken to the Manhattan home of Jennifer's mother, Gloria Farber. Jennifer never arrived there to collect them. That was completely out of character. Whatever strain Jennifer was under, her children were the center of her daily life. Disappearing without arranging their care did not fit the woman the people closest to her knew. At about 7:00 that evening, police were called to the New Canaan property. The first officers approached the situation as a missing person case. Jennifer could have suffered a medical emergency. She could have been stranded somewhere without a working phone. Her vehicle was missing, so locating it became one of the immediate priorities. But during the walkthrough of the house, officers reached the 3-car garage. A Range Rover occupied the center bay. The spaces on either side were empty, and Jennifer's Suburban had not returned. Around the Range Rover, officers noticed markings that appeared to be blood. There were stains on the vehicle itself. More appeared on the floor to its left. Investigators also saw irregular patterns suggesting that someone had tried to clean the area. Not cleaned it well, cleaned it quickly. The garage was secured and processed as a potential crime scene. Presumptive testing indicated blood in multiple locations. Later, forensic work associated DNA recovered from the Range Rover's hood, bumper, and rear fender with Jennifer. Her DNA was also identified from stains on the garage door, the east wall of the garage, and the doorknob leading into the mudroom. A sample taken from the kitchen sink faucet produced a mixed DNA profile containing both Jennifer's DNA and Fotus Dulos' DNA. By itself, that mixture did not establish when either person had touched the faucet or why. Fotus had lived in the family home before the separation, and ordinary household surfaces can retain mixed genetic material. The blood evidence in the garage was different. Its location, its distribution, and the apparent effort to remove it all pointed investigators toward a violent event. Jennifer had not simply left without telling anyone. Something had happened inside or immediately beside her own home after she returned from the school run. Then police found the Suburban. It had been abandoned approximately 3 miles away, near Waveney Park. The way it had been left only added to the concern. The vehicle was positioned with its rear close to a tree. Its running lights had reportedly been left on, and its transmission was in reverse. Jennifer was nowhere nearby. The first public descriptions of that discovery captured what officers saw when they examined the was not limited to the garage. Blood was visible on the passenger side of Jennifer's vehicle, and someone appeared to have tried to remove that as well. The house and the Suburban were now connected by more than ownership. Both contained signs of blood. Both appeared to have been cleaned. And Jennifer was missing from both. The response expanded rapidly. New Canaan police drew in additional resources, including the Connecticut State Police. Officers searched wooded areas around Waveney Park and the roads between the abandoned vehicle and Jennifer's home. Investigators began collecting surveillance footage from residences, businesses, and traffic cameras. Public appeals went out as the search moved beyond a family trying to reach an absent mother and became a major criminal investigation. Every camera mattered because the known timeline was so narrow. Jennifer returned home shortly after 8 o'clock a.m. Her Suburban left again at 10:25 with an unidentified driver. Lauren entered the house at 11:30 and found the unfinished breakfast, the handbag, and 10 missing rolls of paper towels. By that evening, police had found Jennifer's blood in a garage that appeared to have been cleaned. The condition of that garage transformed the case. This was no longer only a troubling disappearance. Investigators had evidence consistent with a violent assault, and the Suburban had not merely vanished. It had been moved, abandoned, and left near another vehicle that did not belong there. Less than 100 feet from where police recovered the Suburban, surveillance footage showed a red pickup truck. At first, it seemed like background traffic. Then investigators traced its ownership. The truck belonged to a 4-group employee, and Fotus Dulos had borrowed it that day. Fotus arrived at the New Canaan Police Department with an attorney and declined to answer questions. His phone answered one for him. At about 7 o'clock p.m., it had been moving through Hartford. This was May 25th, the day after Jennifer disappeared. Investigators wanted to know where Fotus had been and what he had done during those critical hours. Instead of an interview, they got his cell phone. Fotus surrendered the device, then left with his attorney. That phone could not tell detectives precisely where he had stood. Cell site records are not GPS coordinates. They show which towers handled a phone's communications, giving investigators an approximate area that can expand or contract depending on tower placement, signal conditions, and network traffic. But approximate did not mean useless. Fotus' phone had connected in the area of Albany Avenue in Hartford at around 7 o'clock p.m. on May 24th. At roughly that same time, Jennifer's family and friends were confronting the fact that she had missed her appointments, stopped answering her phone, and never returned for her children. Why was Fotus moving through Hartford that evening? Detectives began a camera canvass. They collected surveillance footage from businesses, homes, intersections, and any other location that might have recorded traffic along the route. One camera offered only a few seconds. Another caught the same vehicle farther down the road. Put together, those fragments began to form a continuous journey. The vehicle was a 2014 Ford Raptor registered to the 4 Group, Fotus Real Estate Development Company. Between approximately 7:30 and 7:50 p.m., cameras recorded that truck moving through Hartford. A man in a light-colored shirt, dark pants, and a baseball cap was driving. A woman sat beside him. Then the truck stopped. The driver climbed out carrying a black plastic garbage bag and placed it in a public trash receptacle. He returned to the Raptor and continued driving. A later camera recorded another stop. Another bag disappeared. Then another. There were at least 3 disposal points captured across the route. Footage showing the rear of the Raptor added an important detail. Several plastic bags were visible in the truck bed at the beginning of the trip. Stop by, stop. That supply diminished. This did not look like someone taking household trash to one dumpster. It looked like someone separating material and scattering it across the city. At one point, the driver handled a box differently. Rather than putting it into a trash can, he forced it through the opening of a storm drain. And he was not traveling alone. The passenger could be seen leaning partly out of the truck and reaching toward the sidewalk. Investigators identified her as Michelle Troconis, Fotis' girlfriend. Michelle later acknowledged that she had been in the Raptor during the trip. The footage had captured both of them while suspected evidence was being discarded. The next problem was finding it before it disappeared. That search became a race against the sanitation system. Detectives went to the receptacles visible in the recordings and recovered bags matching those carried by the driver. But some bins had already been emptied. Their contents had entered the ordinary waste stream and been transported to a processing facility, where one black bag could be buried among thousands. Teams spent days searching through transferred waste. Think about what they were looking for. Not a labeled container. Not one unmistakable object sitting on top. They were trying to reconstruct a 20-minute route from surveillance footage, identify which receptacles had been used, determine where each load had gone, and recover small pieces of evidence before they were crushed, contaminated, or carried away. What they found transformed the Hartford trip from suspicious behavior into a suspected cover-up tied directly to Jennifer. The recovered material included clothing cut into pieces, female undergarments, plastic zip ties bearing blood-like staining, and ordinary household debris apparently mixed in with more significant items. Investigators also recovered a shirt consistent with Jennifer's size and with clothing she was believed to have worn on May 24th. Laboratory testing associated Jennifer's blood and DNA with multiple objects recovered from the discarded material. Testing also connected Fotis to items found among that debris. Then detectives turned to the box pushed into the storm drain. Inside was a canceled Connecticut license plate. It had previously been registered to a Chevrolet Suburban owned by Fotis. 2 characters on the plate had been altered with tape, changing how the number appeared when viewed from a distance. That detail mattered. Someone had not merely thrown away an old plate. Someone had taken the time to disguise it first. Fotis reportedly offered an explanation for the discarded objects. He claimed he had discovered suspicious material outside his home. Rather than call law enforcement or preserve it for investigators, he said he panicked and disposed of it. But that explanation raised a fairly obvious question. If Fotis believed the objects might be connected to Jennifer's disappearance, why scatter them through public trash cans and force the altered license plate into a storm drain? Publicly, he insisted that suspicion did not equal guilt. Fotis acknowledged that when a woman disappears, investigators commonly focus on her spouse. He argued that even if husbands were responsible in 90 or 95% of comparable cases, the number was not 100%. He placed himself in the remaining 5 or 10%. The innocent husband under suspicion because statistics pointed police in his direction. The Hartford footage suggested something much more specific than a statistical assumption. It showed a 4-group truck moving through the city. It showed bags disappearing from its bed. It showed a male driver making repeated disposal stops. And it placed Michelle beside him while it happened. Still, none of that answered the largest question. Where was Jennifer? Police had found her blood in New Canaan and recovered more biological evidence along the Hartford route. They had signs of violence and what appeared to be a coordinated effort to destroy or conceal evidence. But they had not found Jennifer's remains. They had no eyewitness to her presumed killing. They had not yet established the complete sequence of the offense or determined what each possible participant knew beforehand. On June 1st, 8 days after Jennifer vanished, police made their first arrests. Fotus Dulos and Michelle Troconis were accused of tampering with or fabricating physical evidence and hindering prosecution. Neither was initially charged with Jennifer's murder. That distinction was not a technical footnote. It revealed where the investigation stood. Police believed evidence had been concealed, but proving a cover-up was not yet the same as proving who had killed Jennifer, or who had helped. The Hartford footage had given investigators a suspected cover-up captured in stages. The recovered bags connected that route directly to Jennifer, and Michelle's presence placed her beside Fotis while evidence was disappearing. Now she had agreed to speak. In her first account, Michelle gave Fotis the one thing the cameras had not, an alibi for the morning Jennifer vanished. Michelle first remembered showering with Fotis that morning. Later, she remembered seeing his phone, but not the man himself. That difference sat at the center of 3 police interviews, because investigators were no longer asking only what Michelle Troconis had done after Jennifer disappeared. They were trying to determine what she knew before it happened. Had Fotis deceived her? Had she discovered the truth later and helped him cover it up? Or had she been part of a plan from the beginning? Michelle repeatedly denied knowing where Jennifer was. She denied knowing what had happened to her. and when investigators pushed her about a body, her answer remained the same. She knew nothing about one. But her account of Fotis' movements was far less consistent. In her initial version, Michelle placed him at the Farmington house early on May 24th. She described waking to an alarm at approximately 6:40 that morning. Then, according to that account, she and Fotis took a shower together. Later, she placed him at the 4-group office. Later still, she acknowledged something much more significant. She had seen Fotis' phone that morning, but she had not necessarily seen Fotis. So which memory was real? Investigators found a physical record that appeared to preserve the earliest version in extraordinary. The phrase alibi scripts did not come from Fotis or Michelle. It was the investigator's description, and it carried an obvious accusation. These were not innocent notes meant to recover memories. Police believed they were coordinated stories. The documents organized the couple's activities in hourly intervals across May 24th and the following day. An original handwritten version was recovered from the trash at the Farmington residence. Photocopies were found inside Fotis' briefcase. And when investigators compared the notes with Michelle's first interview, the similarities were difficult to miss. Her answers followed much of the same sequence. There was, however, a less sinister explanation for why the timelines existed. According to Michelle, Fotis spoke with a family attorney after Jennifer disappeared. The attorney allegedly advised him to record everything he could remember about his recent activities. That included where he had gone, whether he had entered a house, which rooms he had visited, and what objects he might have touched. That kind of advice is not inherently suspicious. When police begin reconstructing someone's movements, writing down details while they are still fresh can prevent ordinary memory gaps from becoming damaging contradictions later. But that explanation only addressed why a timeline might have been created. It did not explain why parts of this timeline appeared to be false. The papers omitted the Hartford disposal route entirely. No black bags. No stops beside trash receptacles. No box pushed into a storm drain. Nothing about the 20-minute drive that surveillance cameras had already documented. And the omissions were not the only problem. The timelines also attributed activities to Michelle that investigators concluded never happened. Her description of Fotis' morning kept shifting as police confronted her with information gathered independently. First, she remembered him at home. Then she said she had seen him at the 4-group office. Eventually, she admitted that she could not place him at either location during the critical period. What she could place was his phone. Michelle acknowledged seeing it at the Farmington house and handling or answering it while Fotis himself was away. Prosecutors believed that was deliberate. Their theory was that Fotis left the device behind so its location data, and any activity created when a call was answered, would make it appear that he was still in Farmington. It was a simple idea. Leave the phone where you want investigators to believe you are. Kent Mawhinney, Fotis' friend and attorney, was at the 4-group office that morning. Neither Kent nor Michelle could ultimately say they had seen Fotis there. The defense maintained that Kent was the person who prompted Michelle to answer Fotis' ringing phone. But regardless of who told her to pick it up, the call created electronic activity without proving that Fotis was anywhere near the device. Michelle, meanwhile, had documented movements of her own. She visited 2 friends at 2 separate addresses that morning. She also took a time-stamped photograph of herself outside a Stop and Shop. The reason she took the photograph was unclear, but its time and location could be checked. That gave Michelle a verifiable alibi for key portions of the morning. It did not give one to Fotis. Her defense argued that the inconsistencies had been overstated. Michelle was under intense stress. Human memory is imperfect, particularly when someone is asked repeatedly about ordinary events that only became important afterward. Her attorneys also emphasized that English was not her first language. Michelle's first language was Spanish, and her English proficiency was described as intermediate. During later court proceedings, she was provided with an interpreter so she could follow technical arguments more accurately. That context matters. A misunderstood question can produce an answer that sounds evasive when it is not. A word like saw can become especially important when the real distinction is between seeing a person, seeing that person's phone, or assuming the person was nearby. But language differences could not automatically explain every contradiction, nor could stress account for every event included in the notes that investigators said had never occurred. Michelle also claimed Fotis had given her a reason not to panic about Jennifer's disappearance. He told her Jennifer had voluntarily vanished before and suggested she might have done it again. Her defense later gave that explanation a psychological frame. Michelle was not protecting a plan she understood. She was being manipulated by a man who supplied an explanation for every alarming detail. Her attorneys also pointed to her cooperation. Michelle voluntarily sat through 3 police interviews. She accompanied investigators during searches around Fotus property. She did not simply refuse to speak and force detectives to build the case without her. Investigators saw that cooperation differently. To them, Michelle was not openly revealing everything she knew. She was disclosing facts gradually, usually after surveillance footage, phone records, or some other piece of independent evidence made the previous version impossible to maintain. That distinction matters. Cooperation can mean telling investigators what happened before they discover it, or it can mean adjusting an account each time they prove another part of it wrong. By the end of the interviews, Michelle had a documented alibi for important portions of the morning. Her story, however, no longer provided an alibi for Fotus. The handwritten timelines could be explained as lawyer-advised memory aids. Their false entries, major omissions, and close resemblance to her changing account were harder to dismiss. And the problem was not confined to words on paper. That afternoon, Fotus asked Michelle for paper towels to clean a dark stain from the borrowed red pickup. Fotus said the stain was coffee. Michelle had not seen a cup, had not seen a spill, and could not remember the towel smelling like coffee. The towel came from a vehicle investigators already cared about, a red 2001 Toyota Tacoma owned by Pavel Gumieni, an employee of Fotus 4 Group construction business. It matched the pickup recorded near Waveney Park, less than 100 feet from where Jennifer's Suburban was abandoned. According to Pavel, Fotus had taken the Tacoma without permission, and when Pavel tried to get it back, Fotus resisted and delayed returning it. That mattered because the state was reconstructing a morning no eyewitness could fully describe. Surveillance showed the Tacoma leaving a vacant 4 Group property at about 5:30 a.m. on May 24th. Shortly before 8 o'clock, it reached the Waveney Park area. Around the same time, a hooded cyclist was recorded riding toward Jennifer's home. The bicycle was distinctive. Vintage style. Ram horn handlebars. Reflective metal rims. Investigators believed those details resembled a childhood bicycle Fotus had brought over from Greece. It was normally stored in his garage, but could not be found in its usual place after Jennifer vanished. Later footage appeared to show a bicycle rim in the Tacoma. But let's be precise. The video did not identify the cyclist's face. The connection depended on the bicycle, the route, the timing, and everything discovered afterward. The prosecution's theory was that Fotus left the Tacoma near Waveney Park, cycled to Jennifer's house, and waited until she returned from dropping off the children. They believed he assaulted her in the garage, restrained her with plastic zip ties, attempted to clean the scene, and placed her in the Suburban. Again, that was a reconstruction supported by surveillance and forensic evidence, not an eyewitness account. At 10:25 a.m., Jennifer's Suburban was recorded leaving her property. Investigators believed Fotus was driving. The vehicle was then abandoned near the waiting Tacoma, its lights still on and its transmission left in reverse. What happened during the unaccounted-for interval near Waveney Park remains unclear. Investigators did not establish publicly whether Jennifer was moved into another vehicle, concealed somewhere, or transported elsewhere. That gap would remain one of the hardest parts of the case. By around midday, Fotus was back in Farmington. Michelle's eventual account placed him there only after the critical morning window. She said she was cleaning the house in preparation for a supposed client meeting the following day. She moved cleaning products, paper towels, and black trash bags while Fotus worked elsewhere around the properties. Prosecutors focused on repeated short trips between nearby properties and witnesses' observations of smoke coming from a chimney. To them, the movement and fire suggested a wider cleanup. The defense argued that neither was sinister. The properties required routine preparation, and ordinary fires had innocent explanations. Pavel's testimony added something more personal. He recalled a previous remark Michelle allegedly made after the Dulos family dog died, challenged both the meaning and reliability of that statement. A hostile comment, even if accurately remembered, is not proof of advanced knowledge. But prosecutors used it alongside Pavel's account of the truck and the cleaning, not as a substitute for the physical evidence, but as context for it. Michelle said Fotus asked her for paper towels because he had spilled coffee inside Pavel's Tacoma. She handed them over. When Fotus returned one, it carried a dark stain. Michelle placed it with the material she had collected while cleaning the house. She could not confirm that the stain was coffee. Investigators later used luminol inside the Tacoma. Luminol is a chemical screening tool that can react with possible traces of blood, including traces left after someone has tried to clean a surface. It can show investigators where to look, but it is not conclusive by itself. Other substances can cause reactions, so laboratory testing must follow. Inside Pavel's truck, luminol reacted in multiple areas. During questioning, investigators showed Michelle photographs and told her the illuminated areas indicated blood. They pressed her on the paper towel, the missing coffee cup, and why Fotus had been cleaning a borrowed vehicle at all. Then came the next layer. The following morning, Fotus and Michelle took the Tacoma to Russell Speeder's car wash. Fotus withdrew cash and paid approximately $250 for extensive detailing. Evidence placed Michelle with him during parts of that process. And this was not a quick rinse. Borrowed without permission had now been cleaned inside and out. Yet Fotus still was not satisfied. When he returned it, he insisted that Pavel replace the front seats. Pavel complied, but kept the removed seats. That decision preserved the strongest physical connection to the Tacoma. Pavel eventually gave the seats to investigators, and laboratory testing identified Jennifer's blood and DNA on the passenger side seat. Think about what that changed. The Tacoma was no longer merely a similar red truck recorded near Jennifer's abandoned Suburban. Jennifer's blood placed her inside, or in direct contact with, the vehicle at the center of the suspected route from New Canaan. The defense later raised a competing claim involving a sweatshirt said to be associated with the hooded cyclist. Michelle's attorney argued that DNA on it did not match Fotus and that a hair was allegedly associated with Pavel. From that, the defense suggested Pavel, not Fotus, might have been the cyclist. But questions remained about how the sweatshirt had been obtained and whether that claim had been established through evidence accepted by a jury. It did not erase the surveillance timeline, the altered license plate, the cleaning, Jennifer's blood on the removed Tacoma seat, or the Hartford disposal route. In a case without a body, every missing interval created room for challenge. No one could point to an eyewitness who saw Fotus attack Jennifer. No one could say where her remains were taken. Investigators instead built the case by joining separate pieces. The Tacoma leaving before dawn, the cyclist approaching Jennifer's neighborhood, the Suburban departing at 10:25, the vehicles converging near Waveney Park, the attempted cleaning, the replaced seats, and the bags discarded across Hartford. Taken individually, each piece had limitations. Together, prosecutors believed they overcame many of the weaknesses that usually make a no-body murder case so difficult. The Tacoma was the physical bridge their reconstruction had been missing. But a third name kept appearing in the timelines and phone records. Days before Jennifer vanished, that man had asked how to enter a secluded gun club, and members had found a human-sized hole there. The hole was approximately 6 feet long, 2 feet wide, and 3 feet deep. Beside it were bags of lime. To the members of the Windsor Rod and Gun Club who found it, the dimensions looked unmistakable. They later described it as 100% a human grave. But this was roughly a week before Jennifer disappeared. At that point, no one had been reported missing. The club members were disturbed, but they did not call the police. Only later would the whole become part of a much larger question. Had Jennifer's disappearance involved more people than Fotus and Michelle? That question brought investigators to Kent Mawhinney. Kent was a practicing attorney, a close friend and associate of Fotus, and another man caught in a contentious divorce. On the morning Jennifer vanished, Kent was at the 4-group office. So was Michelle Troconis. But both eventually acknowledged something important. Neither of them actually saw Fotus there. Kent's name also appeared several times in the alibi timelines created after Jennifer disappeared. And while Fotus and Michelle were driving through Hartford that evening, discarding bags along Albany Avenue, Fotus' phone placed 2 calls to Kent. Kent denied speaking with him during that trip. A call record cannot tell you what was said. It cannot even prove the person whose name is on the account held the phone. But combined with Kent's place in the alibi scripts, his presence at the office, and what investigators learned next, those calls became difficult to dismiss as background noise. Because in the days before Jennifer vanished, Fotus had developed a strange interest in Kent's estranged wife. She was not a relative. She was not a close friend. Fotus was little more than an acquaintance to her. Yet he began calling, asking her to get in touch and trying to learn her plans. On May 16th, 8 days before Jennifer disappeared, she agreed to meet Fotus at a restaurant. The stated subject was her marriage. Fotus reportedly encouraged her to reconcile with Kent, which was an unusually personal proposal coming from a near stranger. Then the conversation became more unsettling. Fotus repeatedly invited her to come back to his Farmington home. She refused each invitation. After Jennifer disappeared and Kent's alleged connection to the case became public, Kent's estranged wife reconsidered that meeting. She came to believe Fotus had been trying to manufacture an alibi by arranging to spend time with her. She feared something darker as well. In her interpretation, if she had accepted the invitation to Farmington, Kent might have been waiting there to harm her. That fear was not established as fact. No attack occurred, and investigators did not prove that such a plan existed. But her account mattered because it suggested Fotus may have been thinking about staged timelines and useful witnesses before May 24th. Then there was the gun club. Kent had helped the Windsor Rod and Gun Club obtain its wooded property in East Granby roughly 12 years earlier. He knew the land, but he had allowed his membership to lapse. In March or April of 2019, shortly before Jennifer's disappearance, he contacted an old friend from the club and asked how he could get back onto the property. He was told where a hidden key could be found. In May, club members discovered the rectangular hole. Its shape and dimensions alarmed them. The bags of lime made it worse, because lime is commonly associated, accurately or not, with attempts to control the odor of decomposition. Still, there was no known victim, no obvious crime, so the members left without reporting it. Then Jennifer vanished. When they heard Kent's name connected to the investigation, the hole no longer looked like an isolated oddity. They contacted authorities and explained what they had seen. Investigators examined Kent's cell phone records. His phone had connected to a tower serving the East Granby area several times between March and May 2019. One connection occurred shortly after 11 o'clock p.m. On May 31st, a week after Jennifer was reported missing. By the time police searched the club, the hole had been filled in. They excavated it. Search dogs were brought onto the property. The ground was examined for any sign that a body had been placed there. No human remains were found. Connecticut's chief state's attorney later said the hole had never contained Jennifer Fotus Dulos. That statement closed off one possibility, but not the suspicion surrounding the site. Prosecutors still alleged that Kent had dug the hole, and that he had done so for a reason. Think about the position that left the case in. The grave-shaped excavation did not contain the missing woman, yet it had appeared shortly before her disappearance on secluded land Kent had recently asked to access. It was circumstantial evidence in its purest form, deeply suspicious, impossible to ignore, and unable by itself to prove what had happened. Kent was eventually charged with conspiracy to commit murder. He pleaded not guilty. At first, he was the only one of the three accused conspirators who could not post bond. He was later released on approximately $250,000 bail, then returned to custody after allegedly tampering with his ankle monitor. Authorities said the strap had been severed, although the two wires used to track his location remained intact. His bond was reduced again in December 2022. Reports later suggested Kent might testify against Michelle. Those reports said he could describe overhearing a conversation about a plan to kill Jennifer, followed by another conversation in which he allegedly heard words resembling, "We did it." But anticipated testimony is not a verdict. What Kent would say, how precisely he would say it, and whether a jury would believe him remained unresolved. His own conspiracy charge and continuing not guilty plea gave both sides reasons to scrutinize any account he might offer. Meanwhile, the search for Jennifer continued. Police returned repeatedly to Fotus Farmington property. They searched wooded areas, flew drones overhead, and excavated sections of ground. Before the property changed ownership, investigators conducted another extensive search. A specialist described as a bone finder examined the basement. None of those searches produced any publicly reported discovery of Jennifer's remains, and while police searched the land, another kind of pressure was closing around Fotus. Gloria Farber, Jennifer's mother, filed a civil lawsuit alleging that Fotus and his company had received approximately $5 million in loans from Gloria and her late husband and had failed to repay them. Fotis disputed the obligation, arguing that the financial arrangement had changed and that some transfers were not supported by promissory notes. For prosecutors, the money did not stand alone. It sat beside the custody battle, Fotis' repeated losses in family court, and the possibility that Jennifer's death could affect control over assets maintained for the benefit of the 5 children. The state considered those pressures when discussing motive. The defense saw something else, prosecutors moving among competing explanations because they could not prove one complete story. On January 7th, 2020, after more than 7 months of investigation, authorities made their move. Fotus was arrested on charges that included capital murder, felony murder, kidnapping-related offenses, and conspiracy. Michelle Troconis and Kent Mawhinney faced conspiracy-related charges. The defense argued that the warrants offered theory, speculation, and suspicion, not a provable account of how Jennifer died. Without her body, prosecutors could not establish the precise manner of death. Without an eyewitness, they had reconstructed the morning from blood, vehicles, phones, cameras, and behavior after the fact. The gun club hole did not reveal Jennifer, and it did not close the case. It expanded the alleged conspiracy beyond Fotus and Michelle while exposing how much of the state's reconstruction still depended on inference. Fotus insisted he wanted a trial to reclaim his name. On the morning of an emergency bond hearing, he never reached the courthouse. Police found Fotus Dulos unconscious inside a running vehicle in his garage. Beside the man charged with Jennifer's murder was a note declaring that he, and the two people accused with him, were innocent. It was January 2020. Fotus had failed to appear for an emergency bond hearing, where he faced the possibility of losing his house arrest and returning to custody. Officers went to his Farmington home. Looking through the garage, they saw him inside his Chevrolet Suburban, showing obvious signs of medical distress. They forced their way in and began life-saving treatment. Fotus had suffered carbon monoxide poisoning. He was taken first to Yukon Health, then airlifted to a hospital in New York. 2 days later, he was pronounced dead. His final note insisted that he had not killed Jennifer. It also said Michelle Troconis and Kent Mawhinney had nothing to do with her disappearance. Fotis' attorney, Norm Pattis, argued that his client had been crushed by the accusation, not overcome by guilt, but by the unbearable weight of a world that had already decided what happened. The state never got to test that claim before a jury. Pattis tried to have Fotis' estate substituted as the defendant, hoping to force prosecutors to present their evidence in court and, he said, clear Fotis' name. Prosecutors declined. A criminal prosecution determines the guilt of a living defendant. Once Fotis died, there could be no punishment, no meaningful defense consultation, and no murder trial against him. That left one of the case's strangest claims permanently untested. Before his death, Fotis' defense had suggested that Jennifer might have staged her disappearance. Pattis pointed to Jennifer's unpublished writing and compared the theory to Gillian Flynn's novel Gone Girl, in which a woman frames her husband by faking her death. Flynn publicly rejected the comparison. This was not fiction, she said. It was reality. Fotis had continued speaking as though Jennifer might return. Nearly 7 months after she vanished, he publicly wished her and her family happy holidays. But investigators had Jennifer's blood in her garage. They had her blood in the borrowed Tacoma. They had surveillance of the Hartford disposal trip and recovered her blood-stained clothing from black garbage bags. Whatever uncertainty remained about the precise sequence in New Canaan, the evidence did not resemble a woman walking away from her life. Fotis' death ended the direct murder case. It did not answer the through question. Had Michelle merely helped him afterward, or had she agreed to the plan before Jennifer disappeared? Nearly 5 years later, in 2024, Michelle Troconis went on trial. Jennifer's friends attended in her place. Her children were present for key proceedings, forced to listen as strangers reconstructed the day their mother never came home. The opposing positions could hardly have been stated more clearly. It was the divide. The state saw a partner in a conspiracy. The defense saw another woman manipulated by Fotis. And because Jennifer's remains had never been recovered, prosecutors carried an unusual layered burden. They first had to convince jurors that Jennifer was dead and had been murdered, then that Fotis killed her. Only then could they reach the final question, whether Michelle knowingly agreed to help before the killing, rather than becoming involved only in the cover-up. The prosecution built that argument from the totality of the circumstances. Fotis left his phone at home on the morning Jennifer disappeared. Michelle answered a call on it. The alibi scripts contained events that did not happen and omitted the Hartford trip. Michelle cleaned the Farmington house, handled the Tacoma's keys, and gave Fotis paper towels while he cleaned what he called a coffee stain. Then she rode beside him while he discarded evidence across Hartford. Prosecutors also pointed to the fires at the Farmington property, the black garbage bags, the changing interview accounts, and testimony about Michelle's hostility toward Jennifer. No single detail had to carry the entire case. The question was what happened when every detail was placed beside the next. As closing arguments began, prosecutor Michelle Manning stripped or in his truck. It found that she knowingly joined the conspiracy and the cover-up. Michelle was sentenced to 14.5 years in prison, followed by probation. Her attorneys and family continue to insist that an innocent woman was punished for Fotis' conduct. Legal challenges and appeals continue. Kent Mawhinney's position remains unresolved. He has pleaded not guilty, and his case is separate. Allegations about what he knew have still not produced a final public answer about Jennifer's location. For Gloria Farber and Jennifer's 5 children, that absence is not a legal technicality. They have lived without Jennifer and without a grave since May 24th, 2019. Years earlier, In a 2012 blog entry, Jennifer wrote to one of her young daughters about a difficult period she believed would eventually pass. Then she added a line that now reads differently. "I know that this too shall pass, but I fear I may be in a body bag by then. Love, your mom." Jennifer's presumed murder now has a conviction, but her remains have not been recovered, and the man accused of killing her never gave a complete account under oath. What happened during the missing minutes near Waveney Park? Where was Jennifer taken? And who may still know? Police maintain that the search is active. Information leading to Jennifer has not lost its value. Subscribe for more carefully documented true crime cases and comment below. Which piece of evidence most strongly proves advanced knowledge of the plan? Not merely assistance after the crime,